In the first 2 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, tension is high, and one of the rarest aspects of the power system that we have only seen on screen twice plays a major role. And if you happen to forget this aspect, the tone of these episodes is entirely different. Now, this is not a reaction. I'm focusing on character development, power system mechanics, and how these episodes fit into the continuity of the broader story, along with, general praise of the incredible show that we all get to partake in. Now, if you're a manga reader, go ahead and skip to the timestamp below, because this first section is going to be for my anime onlys. So let's start with episode 1. And we start off this season with a beautiful shot of Yuji Itadori inside a kitchen, and he is washing his hands. Now, normally this would be kind of a bit inconsequential, wouldn't really matter, but in this scene, we have his hands just covered in blood. And he is in the sink, just washing his hands, trying to get that blood off of him. So a very symbolic moment and depiction for Yuji here, because this is clearly him trying to wash the blood that he feels his hands are stained with after the events of the Shibuya incident. Sukuna taking over him and completely eviscerating so many innocent people, and he himself feels guilty for this, even though we know that it is not his fault. He is not to blame. But nonetheless, this scene really drives home exactly where Yuji is from a mental standpoint. His frame of mind, he's not going to let himself off that easily. He holds himself to a very high accountability, and we know from his grandfather's final words that the curse that was placed upon him by his grandfather unknowingly was to help others. He's a strong kid and to help others. So that's been the journey that Yuji has been on. And he feels like he's completely failing at that, considering the massive amount of lives that was just lost. So understandably so, but we continue on in the episode, and we get now Yuji inside of a building, and he is actually met with a very, very large cursed spirit. And we get an amazing shot of him running and crashing through the window out of this huge building. And we get just amazing shots of the cityscape. And we get a little snippet of Yuta making his way through a somewhat nearby building. And Yuji seems to be looking around. He starts making his way through the city, and cursed spirits are just continuously attacking him. As we know, fake Geto, or the brain, however you guys, refer to him, because we come to figure out that that's what's inside of Suguru Geto's body. That is not Geto, and they're the one who orchestrated everything that was basically in the beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen, leading up to this and the culling games. Now, we know at the end of Shibuya that fake Geto released at bare minimum 10 million cursed spirits. So they are just running rampant throughout the country, causing complete havoc. And Yuji here is obviously moving about the cities, trying to do what he can to lessen the impact that these cursed spirits have on the city. So we see him, battling it out with this kind of giant winged cursed spirit, and it ends up actually falling directly on top of him, crashes through the building, and then this is where we get the next transition of Yuji holding a sword directly over his face. And it, of course, is Yuta Okkotsu, the now executioner for Yuji Itadori. Because we know at the end of season 2, Jujutsu headquarters put out their 5 orders at the end. Just quick little recap of those in case you forgot, is the first one is Suguru Geto's execution, because they believed him to be dead, as everybody did after Gojo killed him after his fight with Yuta. They put Suguru Geto's execution back on because they thought him to be alive, even though we know that that is actually fake Geto, or the brain inside of him. 2 was Gojo was deemed an accomplice of the Shibuya incident because of his relation to Geto, and clearly he did not kill him. We also know this is just a pure power play from the headquarters and the higher-ups. They do not get along with Gojo whatsoever because Gojo is untamable. He is so powerful that generally he does get to operate the way he wants to. Now, he does stay within the system. He has the power to destroy it. He references in the earlier episodes if he should just kill all of the higher-ups, but he says that they will just be replaced with more people like them. Gojo's whole mission is to change things from the inside, and that's why he has gone into teaching at Jujutsu High. But the higher-ups are using the opportunity of Gojo's sealing in the prison realm as a way to essentially get rid of their biggest headache. The one thing that stands in their way of holding all the power in the country is Gojo and all of the sorcerers that he basically protects under his umbrella. So now, Gojo is deemed an accomplice of the Shibuya incident, so he is expelled from Jujutsu Society, and if you even try to remove his seal, that is deemed as a criminal act and you will be punished accordingly. The third is that Masamichi Yaga, the principal of Tokyo Jujutsu High, is also sentenced to death because he incited the Shibuya incident because he was Gojo and Geto's teacher, which we saw before he was principal. He was the teacher of the second-year students, and that was Gojo, Geto, and Iari Shoko. So he's obviously getting pinned for that, but we also know because Yaga has more modern, progressive thoughts about Jujutsu sorcerers as well. And again, the higher-ups are all about tradition, conservative, like being conservative. They do not want that sort of thing. Then next was Yuji Itadori's execution was put back on to be executed effective immediately. And then 5 was that Yuta Okkotsu was deemed the executioner for Yuji. Because in Yuta's words, you know, it was for basically harming Inumaki. But as we come to find out, you know, throughout these episodes, that Yuta actually had an ulterior motive here. But we do get a beautiful scene of when Yuta is over top of Yuji, where they're up on a stage of some theater, and it has the light cascading down from above, and it just looks absolutely incredible. Jujutsu Kaisen is always a spectacle, and it was for season 2. I mean, season 1 looked great. Season 2 just took it up to a whole nother level, and season 3, they are clearly keeping with that vision. So the next segment of episode 1 is going to be the segment of the Zenin clan. So we cut over to the Zenin clan. We are introduced to a few different new characters, but at first we are introduced to Naoya Zenin. He is the son of Naobito Zenin, who we saw in season 2. He participated in the Shibuya incident. He was with Maki and Nanami when they fought Dagon. He is the head of the Zenin clan, the 26th head of the Zenin clan. And this is his son, Naoya. And we get a really good peek into Naoya's personality, character. Basically, he is a full-blown misogynist. And I don't mean that in the terms that get like thrown out nowadays in our actual society. No, this guy is a legitimate misogynist. He hates women. He believes them to be completely below men. And all of his discussion around Mai and Maki just plays that up to perfection. It shows it so clearly, and not to make any sort of excuse for this dude's behavior, because it is absolutely despicable. Again, it's similar to the situation with the higher-ups and just Jujutsu society as a whole. It has not moved into the modern era. It's in the modern age, but their values and principles have not moved with it. It's stayed antiquated and traditional, and that's part of Gojo's whole problem with them and the system. And clearly the big three sorcerer families, which Gojo comes from the Gojo clan, he was steeped in it at a young age, but he was able to be enough of a free-thinking person to just not buy into any of that. But Naoya, since his birth, he's the son of the Zenin clan head, one of the most powerful families in the country, given everything he wants, and having women, wait on him hand and foot and be demeaned his entire life. So that's all he has truly ever known. Again, not excusing it. He's horrible. But it at least gives us an insight into what this dude, why he thinks the way that he does, on top of his own, pretty crappy personality, to be honest. But this section is obviously very important because, first of all, it talks about him and the other two Zenin members that we meet, that they are special grade 1 sorcerers. Basically, they get that title because we know special grade is the highest level, but there's only 4 of those. And then there is first grade. So special grade 1 is essentially if you are a sorcerer, if you're a grade 1 sorcerer that is not affiliated with Jujutsu High. So it's if they come from the clans, they are not affiliated with Jujutsu High directly, they are considered special grade 1 sorcerers. So that would be Naoya, who again we've just talked about, but then that's also going to be Ogi Zenin that we see in that room, and also Jinichi Zenin that we see in that room as well. And this is a very tense, awesome moment, when he enters into the room, and just the direction that they choose to go with for this scene, with the lamp up above kind of moving around, and the lighting is moving, and you can't see like their facial features. It's such an incredible scene that they put together, because it really just drums up the tension that is in this scene between these characters. Because obviously they are here because the clan head, Naobito, is in critical condition, and this is a meeting to basically determine the next direction for the Zenin clan. See what happens with Naobito, and then potentially who would be the next head if he is either one passes, which he does, or he's unfit to, lead from his injuries. And Naoya, being the pompous Nepo baby that he is, just assumes, obviously, well, I'm going to be the next clan head, of course. And he talks about the fact that his brothers are useless, so it could only be him. One is where we start getting some of the familial connections in the Zenin clan, which, is important here. because it's something that you could easily just miss. So he mentions that one, Ogi is out of the question for clan head because his daughters are, no good. Like, so part of being the clan head, your lineage is important. Also, apparently your children play a huge role in that as well, because if it's following down the line, if your children are not, not to be crass, but like if they're really bad or worthless, like you're not exactly setting up for future success here. So, and we know that later on in the episode, which gives us more information here, is later on in the episode, Naoya says that he is Maki's cousin. So if he is Maki's cousin, and so Naobito is his father, and Ogi is Naobito's brother, and Naoya is Maki's cousin. So one, that makes Ogi the uncle to Naoya, and that also makes Ogi the father of Mai and Maki. So that's kind of the connection there. But then Naoya continues to mention about Junichi, the other Zenin clan member there, and he basically just says that, his looks are no good, and if he switched with Toji, it would be a lot better. So Junichi is actually Toji's brother. So it's very interesting there because, we get to see some of Toji's lineage as well with his brother. And once they're all brought together, basically the skinny of the will that's left behind. So Naobito passes, he succumbs to his injuries, and Naoya is named the 27th head of the Zenin clan. But there is a stipulation in that he cannot assume the full title role and have access to all the assets, the cursed tools that are in the cursed warehouse at Jujutsu High and in the family storehouse. He can't use any of that stuff until he gets confirmation from either Ogi Zenin or Junichi. Doesn't have to be both, but it at least has to be one of them. And then the most interesting part happens next, because he states that if Gojo Satoru is dead or otherwise lost the use of his mental faculties for any reason, then the covenant that was established with Toji Fushiguro, which we see in Hidden Inventory, we see Toji meeting with Naobito because he is planning on selling Megami to the Zenin clan. And he made that deal with him, but then in his last moments, he basically tells Gojo about the deal that's supposed to happen so that if Gojo is inclined to, he can actually stop the deal from going through. Because again, Gojo holds that much power and significance that even the Zenin clan, if Gojo wants to step in and take Megami, they can't really do anything about it. So they said that the covenant will be put into action if Gojo is either dead or his mental faculties are incapacitated for any reason, which that does constitute he is sealed in the prison realm. He is essentially dead, or his mental faculties are not functional because he is physically just not there. So this does meet that condition. And if that happens, then Megami Fushiguro will be welcomed into the Zenin clan, and he will become the next head of the Zenin clan as well. And he will inherit all of the assets. And Naoya obviously is pissed about this. And it's just super interesting because the thing to know here is the reason they are placing Megami as so important. Because again, everything about these clans and Jujutsu Society is about tradition, and it is about curse techniques are like a major thing. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you remember, the Zenin clan, That's the clan that the 10 Shadows comes from. That's why Megami has it. He, through Toji's bloodline. And there are techniques that are considered hereditary for these big clans. So they pass down through the generations through the bloodline. And we know, like, for the Kamo clan, that is blood manipulation. So that's Noritoshi Kamo, the guy with the skinny eyes from the Kyoto school. He's a third year. And then obviously we saw Choso. Like, Choso has blood manipulation, and we know that was from Noritoshi Kamo, the other one, the original one, which was the most vile sorcerer in history that we know experimented with a woman and a cursed spirit and then mixed his blood into that amalgamation, and that's what the death painting wombs are. So we have like blood manipulation for the Kamo clan. Then you have the limitless technique, which is from the Gojo clan, which we know our boy Satoru has. And then the 10 Shadows is the like coveted technique of the Zenin clan. And Megami has that. So that's why they are valuing Megami so greatly, is because they want to bring that technique, back into the fold so that it can continue on through their bloodline. So that's kind of the full synopsis on the Zenin clan situation here, because then Naoya basically surmises that Junichi, they would rather have some unknowing brat as the head of the clan, because they could basically influence and push him around rather than Naoya, because Naoya obviously would not have any of that. So they would rather drag their feet, not give Naoya the permission to take over as clan head. And so he's going to go kill Yuji and hunt down Megami to basically shore up his succession. We continue on in the episode, and we get this incredibly tragic recap of Shibuya and everything that Yuji had to endure during that incident. And we get this is one of my favorite shots of the entire episode, and it's when he's on the stairs with the red light coming through the stained glass behind him, and he's just sitting on the stairs. Obviously, like from the opening scene of him washing his hands, Yuji is just racked with guilt, and it is still weighing very heavily on him. And he has a conversation here with Choso about the fact that he can, he's fine physically now from after the incident of Shibuya and all the fights, but he can feel Sukuna's power has grown significantly stronger, which we know it has because, he was fed all those additional fingers, 11 of them in Shibuya. So he went from 4 fingers all the way up to 15. And so he can feel his power growing, but he is not. He's basically him and Choso. Choso's like, hey, Yuji, you don't have to worry about me. You can go back to, all your friends at Jujutsu High, and I will, take care of regaining the other death painting wombs, his other siblings. And Yuji's basically like, well, it's not that I'm worrying about leaving you alone. It's that I can't go back. Like, I've killed too many people. I just, it's not something that I can do. And he thinks back on his words that he had with Megami about, like, what are you going to do if someone that you save kills people in the future? So again, this is the whole thing that he is experiencing here. And clearly our boy Yuji is unfortunately really going through it, as rightfully so, as anyone would. But him and Choso head out to go at least reduce the number of cursed spirits. And that's what I was talking about earlier, because there's at least 10 million that have been let loose. And so he's at least, in the meantime, he can't go back to his friends and Jujutsu High because 1, they want him executed, and 2, he feels the guilt of the situation. His morals, it doesn't allow him to go back. But so we get some really awesome sequences of, Yuji just parkouring through the city, destroying cursed spirits, doing superhero landings, and doing tag teams with Choso where he leads them all into the tunnel and then allows Choso to just piercing blood straight through all the cursed spirits. Looks incredible. The lighting, the animation. And Choso gives Yuji the props, talking about that he was already powerful before because of his immense physical strength, along with his durability, his dexterity, and just his combat prowess. But now he has added subtlety to his cursed energy manipulation, because we know cursed energy is able to reinforce the flesh. So it's able to make you stronger, faster, more durable. And Yuji already had insane stats before cursed energy. So you stack those on top, but he was still a very, very much so a novice when it came to manipulating his cursed energy. And that was something he started to develop through his training montage sort of fights with Todo, all the way back during the Kyoto sister exchange. And that's where he really started getting better. Obviously, he trained with Gojo after his first death, but then it got amplified even more once he was battling against Todo, and his bruzza, took him under his wing, and he improved greatly. But then now, at this point, after everything he experienced in Shibuya, he has added a subtlety to his cursed energy manipulation, more of like a finesse. So now he's able to add more explosive power. And Choso, just says that Yuji's more like a war god at this point, which is so sick. And this is where we get some very interesting dialogue here, because of course Choso talks about Yuji being his brother, and Yuji's like, oh, you're still going on about that. And Choso is like, think about it. Like, your father should have had stitches on his forehead, because obviously we know that fake Geto, the brain, has the stitches on his forehead, and he has already confirmed that he was once Noritoshi Kamo, because we see him in the past. He's got the umbrella and like the little mustache, but we see the scars on his forehead. So he's been hopping around, but he says that Noritoshi Kamo is one of the many names that he has had. So he has been hopping around for a long time. So Choso, because of his connection through his curse technique of blood manipulation, and through that, he was able to surmise that Yuji is a blood relative to him. And the only way that could be possible is that if the brain is also related to Yuji, is his father. That's what Choso assumes here. But we come to see later on that it is actually Yuji's mother that was the brain. So crazy turn of events, but we're not there quite yet, because then of course we had Naoya just show up out of nowhere, because the dude is just fast as could be. And because obviously he is able to use projection sorcery, which projection sorcery we have seen in the past season. And this may be something that many anime-only people may have just kind of glossed over, and not really remembered that it happened. But basically, Naoya, before we get into the projection sorcery, Naoya drops the bomb that like Yuji's execution is back on, and he's just gonna like break his legs so that he can't go anywhere to draw Megami out. And they proceed to, get into a bit of a tussle here. And again, we get to see projection sorcery. We saw actually his father, Naobito, use projection sorcery in Shibuya. That is where it takes 1 second and it splits it into 24 frames of a predetermined action. So a predetermined path that you take, but splits it into 24 frames. So it rapidly increases your speed. And anyone that you touch with your palm also has to abide by that 1/24th movement. And if they don't, that's when you get that glass kind of frame where they get froze in place for a second. But in this season, in season 2, when Naobito used it, it kind of gave us this like white outline of him moving as he went and split it into what looked like 24 frames. So kind of a little bit easier to follow. But here they do a more kind of artistic iteration of it, and we get to see whenever Naoya is attacking and doing using projection sorcery, we see it as like this blue after image, or I guess pre-image. It's happening before, and then his body is following the movement. So it's just really cool to see basically the same technique. Remember, because of hereditary techniques, they were passed down, and projection sorcery is one of those. It is cool to just see the same technique but represented 2 different ways. So and this is where we get one of the most diabolical like aura farming moves in the anime, and it's when Naoya is just beating on Choso, and he decides to fix his hair just mid-fight, just mid-strikes. So absolutely just unnecessary. But I gotta give Naoya, he's got some style points. Again, total a-hole, don't like him, but gotta give the guy some props. He is a very skilled sorcerer. But this is where, we get the incredible moment of a purple aura just covering the entire landscape. And then here comes Yuta Okotsu dropping in on these guys. They're all freaking out. And we get a really cool moment here where Yuji, when he senses that cursed energy, just the massive amount of cursed energy, he assumes that it's Gojo. Because so far, Gojo is the only one that he's been around that gives him that feeling of just like immense power. But then he says, no, it's even creepier, because we know cursed energy, it's negative energy. And Yuta, especially with his connection to Rika, has more of kind of like a sinister nature to it. And I'm assuming that's what gives it more of like a creepy vibe. So just really interesting there, that the comparison, which, I think is just, it's showing us that Yuta is a very serious sorcerer. He is incredibly powerful, and just his presence alone can get people to kind of freak out. So he drops down in, and Yuji and Choso kind of cook up a plan here to run away. Choso's gonna stall and take care of Naoya, while Yuji's plan is to literally just get away from Yuta. Because they're basically like, yeah, he's just like Gojo. If you fight him, you're done. You're done. So that's kind of like their plan. Then they get going. Yuta's actually impressed that Yuji is as fast as he is, because he planned to take him out in the initial strike there. So kind of just a good little nod to Yuji's, again, his physical capabilities, alone with his body, but also through cursed energy reinforcement. And we get a interesting conversation between Naoya and Choso, where Naoya is basically laying out how blood manipulation works. And basically the only part of blood manipulation that is scary is piercing blood. But for piercing blood, you first need convergence, which is the compression of the blood first, which does take time. It has a charge up period. We saw that in Choso's fight with Yuji in Shibuya. So Naoya is correct here. It's when you're from one of the big sorcerer clans, you get information on other clans' techniques. That's how Toji, back in Hidden Inventory, had so much information on the Limitless technique. So that's how he was able to come up with such incredible plans and countermeasures to Gojo's abilities before even having to face off against him. And Naoya here is, because of projection sorcery and it being a speed-based technique, since convergence has a build-up time, basically it's a mismatch. And Naoya is pointing that out and saying, like, you get it, right? Like, it's this fight is basically over before it starts. Obviously, he was a little too big for his britches, and he was wrong. So, which was really good to see, you know? Like, a man like that needs to get humbled. But then this is cool because we cut back to the scene of Yuta over top of Yuji with the blade. And that's actually where the beginning left off. So it showed us actually what was in the future, but then went back and then jumped back to the future, which is now the current timeline. I don't know if that was exceptionally confusing the way I just described that, but Yuji and Yuta have like a scuffle in the theater. Some really awesome shots here with the sword play from Yuta, and Yuji basically doing his absolute best to evade everything that Yuta's doing. And this is where we get more insight onto Yuta's power and the power system as a whole, because he states that, well, like, basically he's saying Yuji is surprised because he doesn't look like a power type. Power type as in like explosive, big brawn, strong. It's just not what Yuta looks like. But because of the absolutely absurd amount of cursed energy that he has, his reinforcing of all of his attacks, it just results in exceptional power. So, and Yuji even thinks to himself, like, well, everyone does that to some degree, but when Yuta does it specifically, it's at a completely other level just because of the incredible amount that he has. And Yuta even points out to the fact that he has even more cursed energy than Gojo does, which Gojo is the strongest sorcerer of the modern age. He is the honored one. So that is an incredible feat. But this is where we actually get some lore / information on the 6 eyes that Gojo has. That the 6 eyes, basically, because he has them, Gojo's efficiency is so high that he basically uses no energy when he activates his techniques. So while Gojo he's the best when it comes to performance, or efficiency is what I would call it. And Yuta even states the fact that he himself can run out of cursed energy. Now, with the amount he has, it would take a while, but for Gojo, he literally cannot run out, because he does have a very large pool as well to work from. But then on top of it, he's almost using no energy when he's activating techniques. So, and his body is also naturally replenishing at the same time. So he just basically has infinite cursed energy for the sake of the argument, which plays right into Gojo's character and everything we know about him. So this is where we get more of the fight between Yuji and Yuta going on. And again, we get some more great information when it comes to the power system and the mechanics. And it talks about the difference between a third-rate sorcerer and a first-rate sorcerer, and the fact that an inexperienced sorcerer who is not that good at manipulating their cursed energy, when they go to make an attack or defend or do whatever, there is a deviation in their cursed energy that basically gives away their next action. So if they're going for like a right punch, you're going to see them build up the deviation, the cursed energy in their fist before they throw it. So you're like, oh, well, here comes the right hook, you know? But the problem when you fight against a first-rate sorcerer is they keep that all even, and there is no deviation, so that you cannot read their next move. But in the case of Yuta, he has so much cursed energy that every move he makes is a critical hit. It does not matter. It's just so powerful that it doesn't matter if you know it's coming, because every attack could be a critical blow. We get to see Yuji attempt to use a knife and imbue it with cursed energy to basically counter Yuta's sword. And he does a pretty good job here, but it actually ends up backfiring because Yuta ends up getting past that. He ends up breaking the knife and cutting straight through Yuji's torso. But Yuji does manage to break Yuta's sword, and Yuta gives him props for it. But this is, of course, where Rika ends up showing up. Yuta this whole time has, as we know, what's going to continue into the next episode, we know that this was all a charade. Now, he does actually have to kill Yuji, so that's not faking it. But this whole thing is all so that he can get around the binding vow that he made with the higher-ups to ultimately protect Yuji. But this whole time, Rika hasn't even been involved in the fight. Now, I know a lot of people, a lot of anime onlys are, a bit confused as to how Rika is even here, because we know from the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 movie that Rika had been released from her curse, and we see her spirit basically pass on because her spirit had been trapped, because Yuta actually was the one that trapped her, and it was released at the end. So people have been wondering, like, how is Rika here? So don't worry, that will eventually, end up being explained. For now, just know she is here in some capacity and is still exceptionally powerful. The episode, of course, ends on a nasty cliffhanger, which is Yuta stabbing Yuji through the heart and killing him. So that was the first episode. We're going to just head right into the next one, not waste any time here. And the second episode is going to open up with a scene of Megami. We could tell by his characteristic brown shoes. He is walking what looks to be out of a hospital building, and that is his sister Sumiki in the wheelchair. We know Sumiki was one of the people that was selected or marked on her forehead with that cursed mark. She is one of the people that were selected to become a sorcerer. So at the end of season 2 in Shibuya, when not only did the brain release 10 million cursed spirits, he also, after absorbing Mahito, used idol transfiguration to awaken 2 different types of sorcerers. One being the modern era sorcerers that he altered their brains to basically gear them towards sorcery, similar to Yoshino Junpei, like Mahito did for him. That's how he ended up being able to use like the jellyfish Shikigami. And so there's the modern types that he awakened cursed techniques in them. And then there is the cursed objects similar to Sukuna. So sorcerers from the past, however long, that were turned into cursed objects that were ingested by people, whether by force, whatever. But he made those type of people, made their body strong enough, altered their body to be capable of withstanding those cursed objects. Because remember, all the way back in season 1, when Yuji eats the finger, Megami tells him that that's just ingesting basically a deadly poison, like that will kill you. And there was a 1 in a million worst case scenario that it gets incarnated, which is of course what happened. But under normal circumstances, a human eating a cursed object results in them just straight up dying. So that is what the two different types of sorcerers are. So we see that Sumiki is out of her coma that she had been in so far in the entire series. Megami's walking away, you know, he's leaving. He obviously went and checked on her after she regained consciousness. And we, you know, got to throw in the little snippet of Sukuna just chilling in his innate domain, kind of his innate world, you know, on top of his bone pile, clearly being very unimpressed with Yuji's performance against Yuta, which he did the same thing when Yuji was fighting Choso. After he lost, you know, he says like, oh, you lost to such riffraff. So Sukuna is the uncle that's just always judging Yuji all the time. And then this is where we transition back to Choso and Naoya, and we just get some absolutely incredible animation and fight sequence here. Again, this is Naoya. We get to see him multiple times using his projection sorcery. That's where we see the blue after the pre-images, and he's really putting the work in on Choso here. But Choso's tough, man. Choso's tough. So even though he's getting the work done on him, he is still capable of, you know, standing strong here. And because we know that projection sorcery, again, it is all based on speed, because even Naoya's father, Naobito, was capable of becoming the fastest sorcerer outside of Gojo Satoru, of course, but still, he was the fastest sorcerer with this technique. So Naoya, even if he wasn't as adept yet at using it as his father, we know that the speed is absolutely no joke from this technique. We also get to see, since Choso determines he is so fast that he can't manipulate blood outside of his body because it is just simply too slow. So he decides to use flowing red scale stack, which is where they basically control the blood within their body. So they do a bit of doping, which helps them elevate all of their physical abilities, including what Choso tries to use it for here is his ocular abilities. So he's sending more blood to his eyes in order to try to be able to see Naoya's movements. And that's how he starts to be able to match Naoya's speed. So super impressive here from Choso that he was even able to keep up. But it doesn't work because Naoya says, you know, he anticipates that the person is going to counterattack anyways, so he was ready for it. And then we get to see basically the duality between Naoya and Choso's opinions when it comes to opinions and feelings when it comes to siblings, and how Naoya feels that if the older siblings are not better than the younger sibling, then they basically serve no purpose and they should just go and die. Whereas Choso, we know, is the best archetype of a big brother. He believes it's his role to make the mistakes in life so that he can lay out a proper path for his siblings, either for them to avoid the same mistakes that he makes or to walk the path that worked out. So if he chooses right, then all they have to do is follow. So beautiful words from Choso here. Such an incredible character and an incredible brother. So if any of us out there are lucky enough to have siblings like Choso, you definitely, you know, we've won in life. And we get some really cool, I mean, just absolutely really cool doesn't really capture it. Some really trippy but beautiful fluid sequences of Choso releasing basically a tsunami of blood through this underground tunnel, and Naoya proceeding to basically try to dodge and get away from it. And this is where the narrator pops back in, which we come to find out, super cool, the narrator's voice is also the voice of Tengen. So super cool connection. I'll talk about that near the end of the episode on like why in lore it's also super cool that it's like Tengen's voice that is the narrator. But anywho, the narrator, or Tengen, I suppose, explains how the death painting wombs are unique in their constitution and the fact that they are able to convert cursed energy into blood. So as long as they have cursed energy, they cannot die of blood loss. So huge advantage there compared to, let's say, Noritoshi Kamo, the third year from Jujutsu High. He can bleed out because he does not have that constitution to be able to convert cursed energy into blood. So he can die of blood loss. So major restriction there that Choso simply doesn't have to follow. And that also, it makes sense why he is as strong as he is. And Choso basically ends up, he ends up outsmarting Naoya here because he uses an original. Naoya believes that he knows everything that is worth knowing about blood manipulation from his experience through whatever information he got from his clan. So he is operating under that assumption. So he goes charging in, but Choso has an original that he came up with while he was grappling with his technique for 150 years, and that is supernova. That's where he does convergence, where he compresses the blood, but instead of firing it through a single point, like piercing blood, he sends it out like a buckshot from a shotgun instead. So it's a wide range, shorter range of attack, but a wider radius. And Naoya basically charges straight into that explosion. And that is ultimately why, he loses. And Choso attributes it to the fact that he does not love his siblings or his brothers. And Choso's going to, go to finish him off here, but Yuta just walks up around the pillar and proceeds to just backhand Choso out of the way, knock him out, and he's carrying Yuji like a bag of trash that he's taken out to the trash can. But this is where we get what I referenced in the beginning of the video, the rarest aspect of the power system. We get to actually see it here. And it's because Naoya he's basically been poisoned, because since Choso has cursed spirit, he's part cursed spirit, his blood is basically toxic to humans, to people. So it got inside Naoya's body, and Naoya's body is rejecting that. So it's causing him to obviously be in some serious anguish. But this is where Yuta actually, says, like, should I heal you? But that's because he says that his reverse curse technique can heal people too. So this is the rarest ability in the entire power system of Jujutsu Kaisen so far. We have seen more people use domain expansion, which is considered the pinnacle of Jujutsu. We've seen that more times than we have seen somebody be able to heal another person with their reverse curse technique. Because reverse curse technique in itself is already exceptionally difficult to do. So even to heal yourself, we knew that Teen Gojo and Geto were not even capable of doing it. Not until Gojo's awakening after fighting Toji. And so that's being able to only do it on yourself. So, but then to be able to actually output that positive energy, because cursed energy, negative. So we learned from Gojo, it's a negative times a negative. You multiply the cursed energy against itself, and a negative times a negative is a positive. So some good old math there coming through in Jujutsu Kaisen. But being able to actually output that is a completely different skill from being able to heal yourself. And we have only seen it on screen twice. First was in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, when we see Yuta use it to heal Panda, Inumaki, and Maki after their fight with Geto. And then 2 was in Shibuya, when Sukuna shows up to save Megumi Well, he shows up and he saves the, wow, I'm drawing a blank, but the guy, super annoying ponytail blonde hair with the marks, that has like the luck based curse technique. Wow, I really cannot remember his name. I apologize. I feel so inept. But basically, Sukuna swoops in, saves him from Maharaga destroying him, which would have ended the ritual. But Sukuna then uses reverse curse technique to heal Megami while he is in, partially heal him while he is in his state of suspended death. And then he ends up going and dropping him off to Ieri Shoko, which we know Shoko is the only other person outside of Yuta and Sukuna that can use reverse curse technique to heal others. So again, this is the rarest ability, and it is the whole crux of these first 2 episodes, but it's just in the background. You don't really think about it, you don't really know about it, but it was the solution that was sitting right in front of your face the whole time. Because I'm assuming, like I myself am a manga reader, so I remember when I read this for the first time, and I'm assuming you guys as anime onlys have a similar situation where you're thinking, okay, well, I know Yuji's not gonna die here, but how exactly is he gonna get out of this situation? Especially, you knew he probably wasn't gonna be able to win a fight against Yuta. Yuta is exceptionally powerful, and Yuji still has a long way to grow. So 1, there was that problem. But then 2, at the end of the first episode, he literally gets stabbed through the heart. So most people, I don't know if they were assuming maybe Sukuna comes in again, which we know at this point Sukuna does not help Yuji. That is just not who he is, never will be. But, what other choice do we really have? It was either that or maybe Shoko, who can heal people, because outside of that, Yuta was the only other person that can heal others, but that's where the answer was. It was staring us right in the face. So something to keep in mind for the future, just those 3. So again, super unique stratus of people here, and this leads directly into one of the most interesting parts of the 2 episodes, and that's getting a baby flashback of Yuji. So he is a baby in his father's arms. We see his father here, and no scars on his forehead, of course, and he's speaking with his grandfather, his father technically, but Wasuke Itadori, Yuji's grandfather, who raised him. And Wasuke is basically saying that you're free to live as you please, but you have to stay away from that woman and the fact that you'll die. And he goes on to say that, he knows, Wasuke says, he knows that Jin has wanted to have a child, and he was never able to do that with Kaori. So saying that he was never able to do that with Kaori, so obviously something happened to her because they never got the chance to have a child. But then as he's saying that, we see Wasuke is saying, but Kaori died, but he's cut off when a woman walks in the door and she says, "Father, what are you talking about?" And we see a woman here with black hair, and she's got the scars from the stitches. And we know the scars only show up once the stitches have been in the body for an extended period of time. So the brain has been in this body for a while. I mean, we know at least 9 months, because that's how long it takes to carry a child. So crazy situation here. Turns out the brain is actually Yuji's mom. So it just obviously spurs a ton of questions. I remember this moment. So I'd just love, if you're interested, let me know down below kind of what your thoughts are when it comes to the brain and Kaori and, Yuji's mother. So then we kind of cut out of that flashback, super important, but we cut away from that. And we're back to Yuji just waking up, and we get this super cool moment where Yuta's like, oh my God, thank you. Like, whew. And he's obviously relieved. So totally different demeanor from what we've seen so far for these episodes, of course, because he was putting on the act. And he describes the fact that Gojo came to see him back in like September. So this is obviously a month or two prior to the events of Shibuya. And he just says that he's got a bad feeling. And if anything happens to him, Yuta needs to look after the first and second years. And then he name drops someone that has only been named like once, maybe twice at most. He name drops Hikari. Hikari is the third year that has been mentioned, like I said, once or twice. And Gojo, when he referenced him back in season 1, even stated how powerful Hikari potentially could be. He compares to, him maybe even reaching his level. So he even says here, like, Hikari, he's going to be fine. So you just take care of the first and second years. So obviously giving Hikari some serious props here again, and, giving the role of babysitter to Yuta, especially looking out for Yuji in particular, because his situation is very similar to Yuta's, which we know from Zero, super similar situation. And Yuta just explains his whole plan about the fact that the higher-ups wouldn't just let him be the executioner because the connection to Gojo, and since Gojo has a connection to Yuji, they would not trust him. So that's why Yuta formed a pact with them, because you cannot break a pact. So he did have to kill him, but because he had heard about, Yuji coming back to life once, he figured that, hey, you could probably do it again, so I'm going to try it. So we get some, again, this gives more depth into Yuta's character, because Yuji even wonders, like, why the heck would you do this? Like, why are you going this far for me? And Yuta just says, well, people that I cherish you. So that line, he doesn't want to see the people he cares about in turmoil or disarray, and they asked him. So he, naturally being the very compassionate and empathetic person that he is, looks out for those people as well, Yuji included. And he goes on to just talk about the fact that Yuji's not to blame, because the power he holds within inside of him is not his own, which is a great point. But then before they can even continue this conversation, we have Megami just materialize, like out of the shadows, of course. He's the 10 Shadows user, telling Yuji to get his butt back to Jujutsu High. They need to get going. Yuji, of course, again, because of the guilt he feels, just cannot get himself to go. But Megami tells him, like, we're not heroes, we're Jujutsu sorcerers. Like, there's no one that can judge us, and we need to keep proving why we exist. And Yuji's just thinking about the fact that if Megami sticks around him, he's just going to continue to suffer. So again, they're both right, and they're both thinking of each other. But Megami says that Norito Shikamo has began a death game for sorcerers, the culling game, and basically Sumiki has been drawn into this game too, and he needs Itadori. He needs Itadori's strength. We get to see some really cool scenes of a bunch of stuff that was actually in the opening trailer, but he just says he needs Itadori's power. We see Megami is truly, truly in anguish here, because Sumiki is Megami's whole reason for being a sorcerer in the first place. He just wants to ensure that she lives a good life. And then this is where we get the info dump of the culling game rules. There's a lot on screen. Seems maybe a little complicated. Not that much. It's not that bad. Basically, rule 1, after awakening their curse techniques, you must go to a colony of your choice within 19 days and pledge your participation in the game. So you got to go somewhere, pledge your participation. And players rule 2, if you don't follow the first rule, so you don't go and pledge that you're going to participate in the game, your curse technique is removed. Number 3 is non-players shall, when you be a non-player, when you enter a colony, you become a player, and that is you participating in the culling games. So that relates to number 1, that within the 19 days you enter a colony, boom, that is you becoming from a non-player to a player, and you are pledging that you are going to participate in the culling games. 4, you'll receive points for ending the life of other players. Basically, the points shall be designated based on the value that the game master gives their life. But a general rule is that non-sorcerers 1 point, sorcerers 5 points. If you spend 100 points, so obviously if you've killed a lot of people and racked up the points, if you spend 100 points, then you can use those to add a rule, but you have to negotiate with the game master to add the rule. And the game master has to approve the additional rule so that he has to approve it, but if the rule would significantly hinder the continuation of the game, it will be rejected. And that players who do not show a change in points in 19 days of joining or acquiring points shall be stripped of their technique. So pretty cut and dry. It'll continue to play out as we go, but these are things you kind of want to be aware. But basically, you got to go, participate. You're supposed to kill people to get points. You can use the points to add rules as long as the rules don't infringe on the continuation of the game. And if you stay stagnant, you don't go participate, or you don't get any points, so you just go inside and you sit there and you don't do anything, both situations result in the removal of your curse technique. But obviously, there's something a little bit more behind there, but I'm not going to go too much into it. So we'll continue on here. Just goes through the rules. So again, just brush up on those a little bit because they will be important. But Yuji does reluctantly agree because he can really see the anguish on his friend's face, but he decides to, he talks to Yuta and the fact that he knows Sukuna is planning something with Megami. And even if he ingested all 5 fingers at once, he wouldn't lose control like he did in Shibuya. But for any reason, if Sukuna does come back out, he wants to task Yuta with killing him. So, and he thinks that Yuta could do it. Now, whether or not Yuta actually could do it, very hotly debated. I have my own opinions on it, but I am not going to share those here just because I want to, keep everything, like I said, spoiler free and very friendly for you guys. And I want more so to hear what your experience as a anime only is like, because I've been reading Jujutsu Kaisen since the very first chapter released back in 2018. So for me, just seeing this on screen is just such a treat, but obviously I understand what's going to happen from, plot point perspective. So I'd love to hear what you're experiencing as an anime only. And they decide that they are going to head back to Jujutsu High because they need to contact Tengen, because they need to figure out Noritoshi Kamo's, Fake Ghetto's plans. They need to and Tengen is someone who is kind of entangled into everything in the country. We know that they are the ones who maintain all the barriers around Jujutsu High, and they are just very ancient. They have an immortality curse technique, so they assume since Noritoshi Kamo or Fake Ghetto is also very old, that there's a good chance that Tengen will have some additional information that they could use themselves. Now, they do head back to Jujutsu High because they also want to figure out how do they open up the prison realm, because one of their top priorities is they got to get Gojo back. But they end up going back to Jujutsu High. We get to see Maki for the first time since she got absolutely roasted by Jogo. So she does come out alive, but she is covered in burn scars. Her hair is completely styled differently, but they end up making their way all the way into the Tomb of the Stars. They use Choso's connection with his siblings because they are in the cursed storehouse, which is in that same pathway. They used it back in season 1 to get some of Sukuna's fingers, and then they make their way into the Tomb of the Star. Then there's an interesting moment here that I'm not sure, I would love to know if you guys kind of caught it, where Yuji's walking, and they're walking before they enter the tunnel, and there's blood stains on the ground. And he, points out the fact that there's blood stains. This is the blood stains from Riko Amanai being killed by Toji Fushiguro right in front of Geto. So this is down before they were going to meet Tengen, and she had decided that she didn't want to assimilate anymore, and then Toji happened. And Yuki even states the fact that all the distortions in fate and everything that was going on seemed to happen 12 years ago from that event. From Toji, everything kind of shifted and changed from that point forward, which it really did. That set in motion the majority of everything we're experiencing. Gojo's awakening, Megami being brought to Jujutsu High, just so many different things. I'm not going to go down the whole list because that would take a while. But they go in and they seem to be being rejected. And maybe only Yuki is being rejected. She thinks that. So interesting kind of point that she puts in there. But they're basically like, we ain't got time for this. We hoping to talk to Tengen. It's not happening. We got to get out of here. But then this is where we get to see Tengen for the very first time. And I like how, if you've noticed here, Tengen does not refer to them in their names. So first says child of Zenin, so obviously referring to both Megami and Maki. Second is descendant of Michizane, which is Yuta. We know back from JJK 0 that Gojo did some digging into his lineage, and he is actually a related descendant of Sugawara no Michizane, which the Gojo clan also stems from. That's why Gojo tells him they are distant relatives. Then says also the death painting, or cursed womb death painting, Choso, and then of course ends with and vessel of Sukuna. So obviously referring to our boy Yuji here. And just a little thing here, doesn't refer to Yuki at all. She's there, doesn't refer to her whatsoever. So just an interesting thing to kind of point out there, because everyone else got recognized. Taken together, these episodes honestly are less about spectacle, though there is plenty. Rather, it serves to give us a compelling transition into the future of this arc. Now, doing so builds great anticipation and excitement for the episodes that follow. And if you're interested, I'd be curious how you felt about this opening duo of episodes. And I will be continuing this kind of analysis as the season goes on. So for my anime onlys, this is going to be the end of it. And I really appreciate you being here. So peace out. Now, manga readers, here we are. It is time for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. We finally got the first 2 episodes here, and it starts with an incredible sequence of our boy Yuji Itadori here washing his hands off in the sink. Obviously, the blood on his hands from the events of the Shibuya incident, and he just keeps washing, and he cannot get that blood gone whatsoever. really just gives us the insight on Yuji's, extreme guilt. That whole situation was absolutely horrible for him. But then we get a really cool shot of him inside of a building, and he's like listening for something, but then there's this giant cursed spirit in front of him, which all of this stuff right here, totally anime original, which I don't know about you guys. I am completely cool with all of the additions that they have placed into Jujutsu Kaisen, because ultimately it's like, as manga readers, the anime is there to take the source material and elevate it, take it to the next level. So as long as it doesn't deteriorate the original work, and Shoto Goshizono and the team at MAPPA, they truly understand what they want to do and how Jujutsu Kaisen should be directed. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I could not ask for something better than this. We get to see Yuji, he's making his way through the city. He's fighting this like giant winged hand type curse spirit, which again, totally anime original. Chucks him through a building, but then it's like flying over, getting ready to, I don't know, just do like a dive bomb or something. And Yuta just completely cuts through it from behind, and then proceeds to crash through like what seems to be a theater, and is just over top of Yuji with the blade right above his head. And Yuji's, holding on for dear life here. So again, this also did not happen in the manga either. But an incredible opening sequence. We get a kind of pulled out shot of the theater, and it just looks, we got like the light glistening down from above, looks absolutely stunning. And we end up kind of seeing that what they did is they pulled a trick where it's like they showed us into the future of after Yuta shows up and they run away, to then shifting back to previous, and then eventually getting us back to that point. But then we segue to the Zenin clan segment of the episode. And first time we get to see Naoya here, misogynist supreme, just absolutely diabolical, and just saying some really terrible things here about Maki and Mai and just women in general. But this is something, it's not necessary, it's not dismissing what he's doing, or that it's not terrible, or the things he says are wrong. But you have to think about that the Jujutsu Society, the higher-ups, and especially the big three clans, they all are steeped in very conservative and traditional values, very antiquated. Basically, the modern age has come, but sorcerer society has stayed the same since like way back when, which is one of Gojo's biggest gripes, and the reason he's trying to change it from within and not just eliminating the higher ups, because he knows it's just going to be replaced with people exactly like them. So Naoya, being a Nepo baby that, was the son of the 26th head of the Zenin clan, he got everything he wanted, was weighted hand and foot by women, and was always shown women in a inferior position to men. So it's no surprise that the dude has the beliefs that he does. Again, not excusing them. They're terrible, but you can at least get a sense of where this comes from with his character. Then we get the crazy scene, which was in the manga, didn't give this vibe at all, but the way they do the shot between Naoya, Junichi, and Ogi, where they get in their little scuffle and then the lamp on the ceiling like spins around and it's shifting the light and it's just squeaking, but then you can't see any of the facial features for the characters. I think it's just an incredible sequence that they drummed up as the will is like being read out. But here we have obviously Ogi with that, which is now Maki and Mai's father. And then we have Junichi, which is actually Toji's brother. And that's where Naoya kind of mocks him on his looks of like, oh, well, I should have been Toji. But then, of course, we have Naoya getting pretty upset because Megami, since Gojo is incapacitated, Megami is being welcomed into the Zenin clan, and because he possesses the crown jewel of the hereditary techniques of the Zenin clan, the 10 Shadows, he is being directly appointed to head if he, so chooses. So Naoya obviously is super triggered by that. But again, really cool scene. They made the Zenin family, the Zenin section of this a lot more, I don't want to just say cool, but it is a lot cooler than I anticipated it. I assumed it to be more so just like on the info dump side, but they really drummed it up with the drama and the cinematic aspect of what's going on here. Of course, we know that Naoya's like, all right, well then Ogi and Junichi are not gonna, give me permission to become head because they'd rather have this unknown brat that they feel like they could probably boss around a bit instead of him. And so he's like, well, I'm going to go kill Megami and basically get him to sign off his rights to becoming clan head to me. But this is where we segue to the next section of the episode, which is one of my personal favorites. Even though it's depressing, we get like a montage of the atrocities that Yuji experienced in Shibuya. But then he's sitting on that staircase that we got the image of during the promotional image, where it's the stained glass window behind him and it's shining down and he's just sitting on the stairs, just totally somber, totally dejected, rightfully so. And he has this conversation with Choso, and then we go to, it just looks, I just want to kind of pause on this, looks so dang good. Like, it's unbelievable, the quality of the animation, and the soundtrack throughout all of these episodes is just tier 1. So we are really just so blessed. We are eating good. But then, of course, we pick back up where season 2 left off with the clap on the bridge. We get some awesome, the parkour through the city of Yuji, just getting chased by these crazy curse spirits and setting up the tag team of devastation with Choso with the piercing blood through the tunnel. Then we get our glaze of our boy Yuji, where Choso, says he's added subtlety to his exceptional physical strength. And it's interesting here because they did change the translation, where in the manga it says that Yuji is like a demon god, but in this translation it says that he is a war god. So don't get me wrong, both are like super cool, but I don't know, demon god kind of hits a little bit harder for me, and that is the original translation. But like I said, I'm cool with war god as well. But then we have Naoya pop it, like literally it looks like instant transmission. He's just like up on the bridge, up above them. Obviously it's from projection sorcery. He's moving fast as that 24 frames per second action going on. And then it proceeds to, get into their little scuffle, which in the manga, Naoya he's absolutely like getting the upper hand on the both of them, obviously because they are completely caught off by his speed because they don't know his technique. So he does have the upper hand, absolutely. But in the anime, they have him completely disrespect them, and especially Choso in this moment. And that's where, he's fixing his hair as he is just walloping on Choso's face. And I just know, and I've seen like a little bit, I'm not really on social media, but I've seen that apparently this scene in particular has kind of materialized into a Lobotomy Kaisen meme template that is now being used everywhere. So not surprised at all. Jujutsu Kaisen has some serious motion when it comes to influencing kind of like internet culture and pop culture. So I'm totally geeked. And it's a perfect one, honestly. But then this is really cool because we get to see the first look of Naoya's projection sorcery, which does have a different imagery than Naobito's. So this is what I really like, is that they've taken the same technique, and you could say, oh, well, that's just, it's a new season, so new style. But it's like, this is the same team, same director that did season 2. So I think this was more of like an intentional thing, because we even know, and this is a long time, but all the way in the Shinjuku Showdown, when Yuji awakens Shrine, his version of Dismantle and Cleave manifests differently than Sukuna's does. Still the same technique and the same function, but it manifests. Yuji's is like the lines with the scissors, like a perforated line with the scissors. So it's the same technique, functions the same, but it looks different. So my thought is kind of, maybe that's kind of a little bit of a play on that, because it still is a projection, because it's giving us the frames of Naoya moving in light blue before he does it, but it just spins it a little bit differently because his father's was the white kind of like traced lines instead. So just thought it was a cool aspect. Love to know what you guys kind of think in that regard. But then we get the aura moment of Yuta showing up with his just massive cursed energy, dropping down on them, destroying the cement. Really awesome. We get into kind of like the chase scene between Yuji and Yuta. This is where it cuts back to what we saw in the beginning, where they're in the theater. And we get some awesome sword combat between Yuji and Yuta here. You know, Yuta starts talking about, you know, obviously his massive amount of cursed energy, how it's even more than Gojo's, but because Gojo has the 6 eyes, he is the best when it comes, he says performance in here, which is another kind of interesting, different translation, because I believe in the manga, it's referred to as efficiency. So, and it makes sense, performance, efficiency kind of linked here as well. But because, you know, Gojo has the 6 eyes, his efficiency or performance is the best. He uses near zero cursed energy when activating techniques. And Gojo does have a large amount of cursed energy as well. Yuta has more, but Gojo cannot run out of cursed energy, but Yuta can. It takes a while for Yuta because he has such a vast amount, but it definitely can happen. We get to continue their fight where, you know, they're kind of going at it. Yuji manages to find that knife that's in the kind of like Hummer looking vehicle, and they're going at it, but ends up shattering the blade, and Yuji getting his stomach sliced, which this happens in the manga. It was similar, but this happens so fast in the anime between the slashing of Yuji's torso and him breaking the sword. It's like an instant, but it makes sense because in the manga panel, obviously they're stretching it out between different panels of the motion and then doing it. But this is almost a simultaneous. As Yuji's blade shatters and he gets sliced, Yuta's sword goes into the ground and Yuji immediately kicks it to break it. So really awesome fluid dynamic here. And then of course, Yuji, being the mad lad he is, just says like, you know, it's a deep cut, but my guts aren't falling out. Like, who talks like that? Yuji is crazy when it comes to his tolerance of pain. And it harkens back to Nobara saying that if it's just pain, Yuji Itadori will not stop. And that is 100% the truth. He will not stop. And that's ultimately one of his strongest attributes of his character and the recipe for success for him. And then the episode ends, of course, with Rika restraining Yuji and Yuta piercing Yuji through the heart. You know, oh my gosh, he killed him. You know, he's dead, right? Of course, you know, he's not dead. used reverse curse technique as soon as his heart stopped. But this leads us into the next episode, episode 2, and it starts with a scene of Megami walking out of the hospital with Sumiki and Nita behind him. But of course, we know this scene hits totally different for a manga reader compared to an anime only. Because if you're an anime only, you're like, oh, Megami went to, Sumiki woke up from her coma. Yeah, she's, being enlisted into the culling games, but she woke up from her coma and Megami's going to see her in the hospital and she's in her wheelchair and oh, that's so sweet. But then as manga readers, we know literally at this point from after awakening, that is Yorozu. That is Yorozu in the wheelchair. She is already in control, but she is utilizing Sumiki's memories to play the role of Sumiki because she also has not changed her looks to make herself look like what she looked like in the Heian era. So she's full on playing a persona here and manipulating Megami and all of the sorcerers around her. So this scene hits totally differently for a manga reader. But we continue on, and this is where we get probably the best action sequence of the 2 episodes, and that is the Naoya versus Choso fight. They took the source material and just blew it out of the water. Naoya's projection sorcery looks incredible. He is just laying it on Choso. And it really does seem here like Naoya doesn't really do much damage, but I don't think it's more so. I think it's the case of Choso's insane endurance and durability. He is exceptionally physically strong and can take an absolute beating. Because we know that to be true because in his fight against Kenjaku in the Tomb of the Star before, Yuki, he takes an absolute beating from Kenjaku. And that is far worse than what Naoya is dishing out here. So Choso is exceptionally durable and has insane stamina and endurance. So this isn't to downplay Naoya. I think he does have exceptional skill as a sorcerer. I mean, he's a grade 1 sorcerer. He's got a technique that makes him faster than the vast majority of characters in the series. And, he's probably pretty decent when it comes to reinforcement as well. But against someone like Choso, he pulls the blade out. He's got to kind of supplement here. But of course, we have the dynamic of the 2 opposing views of brothers or siblings, and Naoya believing any siblings that are not more competent than the younger, like older siblings that are less competent than the younger siblings, basically are pointless, shouldn't be there, and they should just go die. And then we have Choso being the real big brother, and that it's their job to walk the path ahead of their younger brothers and show them either the paths to avoid through their own mistakes or the path to walk down to basically take them into the future. So Choso, big bro, for the win. Then we get a super trippy scene of when Naoya is trying to avoid the tidal wave of blood coming from Choso after he cuts him. And Naoya, it's just this super fluid, kind of trippy, but really awesome looking like chase scene as he's avoiding the blood going down the underground tunnel and it's following after him. And this is where we end up finding out because the narrator pops back up here, explaining about Choso's special constitution and how he can turn cursed energy into blood. And as long as he's got cursed energy, he's not going to bleed out, which is a huge advantage of a death painting womb with the blood manipulation curse technique, because that's something that Noritoshi Kamo he does not have. That is, in all sorcerers, human sorcerers of the past that have had blood manipulation, they have had to be cautious of losing too much blood. So this is something that is very special to them and actually a huge boon when it comes to blood manipulation specifically. But this is where we see the narrator again. And then at the end of this episode, when we get the reveal of Tengen, Tengen's voice is the narrator's voice, which is a super cool thing. And I think it is very intentional because we know after Tengen did not assimilate with Riko, they evolved because of their curse technique, and they no longer were like a single entity. They basically merged with all of like their barriers throughout Japan. So they became like a part of the environment almost. And then what we see in the Tomb of the Stars is like a projection of themselves. Obviously, we know they do still have a like singular physical body, but it's like dormant. It's the one that Kenjaku seizes that's like in the tree. But this is super cool because since Tengen is now like merged with all of the surroundings, it's almost like Tengen is watching all of this stuff happen and then narrating and explaining what's going on like as it's happening. So if that was their goal and what they were planning on doing when they matched up those voices, great choice. I'm a huge fan of it. Let me know, what you guys kind of think and if you think it was super intentional. Then, of course, we get to see Naoya get humbled because he thinks because he has all the information on blood manipulation because he's part of the big three and they have information on the hereditary techniques of the opposing clans. That's how Toji knew so much about the Limitless. He thinks he only has to worry about piercing blood when it comes to convergence. And if he can dodge that, he's fine. But he doesn't realize that Choso has come up with the original technique of supernova, which is basically the buckshot technique of the blood manipulation. So, Choso's about to finish him off, and then we get that jump scare of Yuta coming around the corner, carrying our boy Yuji like a trash bag, and then proceeds to just B-slap Choso off to the side. just completely eviscerates him. And then, of course, we get Naoya just has to be healed. Then we get the super pivotal scene of the flashback from baby Yuji, where we get to see Kaori Itadori, or Kenjaku, for the first time after Wasuke, Yuji's grandfather, is talking to his father Jin Itadori, and is basically like, Kaori died. I know you wanted to have a child with her, but that didn't happen and she died. But if you... So clearly whatever is going on here with this woman who used to be your wife, you should probably stay away from her. But obviously he does not listen and has a child with Kenjaku anyways. Then, we get our scene of, what Yuta's plan actually was in terms of throwing off the higher-ups or throwing them off the trail and saving Yuji by forging the pact to kill him, but then immediately using reverse curse technique to heal our boy, bring him back to life. And we get I think it's our second or third mention of Hikari here, when it's Gojo going to see Yuta in Africa. And he says like, hey, take care of the first and second years. Like Hikari's, gonna be fine. So Hikari gets mentioned again. Cannot wait for Hikari to be on screen. I hope you guys are super pumped too. Big fan of Hikari. Then we get some more of the character interactions between Yuji, Yuta. Megumi shows up trying to drag Yuji's butt back to Jujutsu High. Yuji, of course, wants to deny it because of the guilt and everything that he feels towards the Shibuya incident. But Megumi needs his strength because Sumiki, Yorozu, has been ensnared in the culling games. And then we get the brief snippet of a bunch of the players, which we saw during the trailer, the official trailer that we got, the teaser. We get to see the quick image of Kashimo, the sky manipulation from Uro, the blood stains with the sunflower pin for Higuruma, Ryu Ishigori, smoking his cigarette up on the roof, and also Reggie Starr hanging out in his hotel room with all of his receipts hanging up. Then we get the blitz of the culling game rules. I'm assuming if you've read the manga, you know the rules, so I'm not necessarily... I can go through them like super abridged version, which, you gotta, within 19 days of awakening your curse technique, you gotta go declare participation at a colony of your choice. Then if you don't go, you're stripped of your technique. And remember, since curse techniques are fundamentally a part of your brain, if you have the curse technique stripped from you, that does mean death. So if you don't participate, you die. Then when you enter, you become a player. Basically, if you're a non-player, you enter, become a player. Then you'll receive points if you kill people. Typically, non-sorcerer, 1 point, sorcerer, 5 points. You can use points, 100 points to add a rule, as long as the rule does not significantly hinder the continuation of the culling game. The whole purpose of the culling games is for it to be a perpetual game. It's supposed to never end. And then players who don't show a change in points in 19 days, so if you just go and sit around and don't do anything, you get stripped of your technique, so you die. Then we get them all heading back to Jujutsu High because they got the game plan to go, of course, talk to Tengen because they got to figure out how to get Gojo out the box. And then they got to figure out what Kenjaku is actually cooking up here. We get to see Maki for the first time since her roasting from Joko in her new character design of the short hair and the burn scars all over her. They make their way into the Tomb of the Star. They get to see the blood stains from Riko Amanai after Toji just snuck her with the Glock. And then Yuki makes the astute observation that all the distortions of fate in the world seems to have occurred from 12 years ago, which is 100% true. Toji broke the chains of fate that set all of this crazy stuff on its path. Gojo's awakening, Megami coming to Jujutsu High. The list goes a very, very long way. Toji is actually one of the most pivotal characters to the plot of Jujutsu Kaisen, bar none. Crazy, because he was in the story for such a teensy amount of time. But then, of course, they enter the tomb and they are seemingly rejected. Yuki surmises that it's not all of them that's being rejected, but just her, because Tengen's not showing up. And we know that to be the case primarily because Yuki was actually a candidate for a star plasma vessel previously. So there is some sort of tensious relationship between Tengen and Yuki. We see through their conversation that Yuki can sense all of the previous star plasma vessels inside of Tengen. So that's why she's being rejected. Then, of course, they go to leave and Tengen refers to, them all besides Yuki, of course. And they say because they've met before. So that's why they didn't bring him up. Obviously, that's because there's a bit of a history there. But of course, they say child of Zenin. That's both Megami and Maki. Then we have descendant of Michizane. That is Yuta, because we know Gojo from Zero had done some digging on Yuta's lineage, and it turns out he's a descendant of Sugawara no Michizane, which also the Gojo clan is from that lineage as well, which is why they're distant relatives. Then we have the death painting womb, Choso, and then vessel of Sukuna, our boy Yuji. And this is where we get the first view of Tengen and confirmed that their voice actor is the same as the narrators. And that is where episode 2 ends. So if you are interested, I'd be curious to see how you felt about this opening duo of episodes. And I will be continuing this kind of analysis as the season goes on. Peace.